In Real Talk tonight with Cindy Baas and Todd Bingham, our esteemed trainers, educators, and TREC trustees. We'll get that in, talk about that a little later. But Cindy and Todd, thank you so much for joining me this evening.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Happy to be here.
you. Yeah, great to be here.
So, unfortunately, we get the task with not always talking about the sexy things in real estate, but they're the necessary things to keep us out of orange or stripes. Isn't that correct?
Yes, that's our goal.
That's the goal. So tonight we're going to talk about, we've actually had some recent updated changes on kind of an emergency basis based on the 88th legislative session that just went into effect September 1st. So we're going to talk about that first. And then we're going to still talk about common pitfalls that we're seeing still from previous contract changes that our esteemed colleagues seem to still be struggling with. So tonight you get both, guys. You get to understand the changes that just went into effect September 1st, and we're going to go deeper into some of the most common pitfalls that we're seeing currently. And then, of course, I want to remind everybody, if you have a question that you want one of our esteemed guests tonight, Cindy or Todd, to answer, please feel free to put it in the chat. We will throw it at them in real time, and let's see how they do. So it's swim or drown, guys. Let's go. All right. So first, let's talk about the two forms, because the other ones weren't necessarily major forms changes or anything else, but we've got two forms changes that we now have to be aware of. So we're going to pop that on the screen here in a second. Sorry, guys, we're really tiny over here on the right-hand side, but we want you to be able to see. And so we will also put this in the chat for you to be able to pull up on your own. But there's two updated forms starting September 1st. One is the Consumer Protection Notice, and the other is the updated Seller's Disclosure Notice. So both of those, no matter what type of real estate you're doing, you need to start using. So let's go into the really fun Consumer Protection Notice, Todd, that we all love to talk about but don't truly understand.
Okay,
more
perfect.
so that we all love to post about.
Right.
So can you kind of tell us what the Consumer Protection Notice is first, and then what changed?
Absolutely. Okay, so the Consumer Protection Notice is it's really just put in place to make sure that the consumer knows that they can contact someone if they do have an issue with their agent or their broker, and it just sort of explains all of the the different protections that are in place. I have noticed that a lot of our agents and brokers are putting this on social media in an interesting way. I think this is kind of an old way to do this, but anyways, before I jump to that, there's this is really everybody. I mean, this is real estate brokers, sales agents. You need to be making sure that you have this on somewhere online. If you have a website that is designed to solicit business and get people to contact you about real estate services, you have to have the Consumer Protection Notice posted on that website. You also have to have it other places, like physically in your office, if you have an office. But the main thing here, I think the easy thing to mess up is to not have this done correctly. I see it incorrectly placed plenty of times whenever I'm looking through other agents' websites. But the link to that has changed. So with the CPN, or the Consumer Protection Notice, there's nothing that you customize. You don't type anything on there like the IABS or anything like that. Therefore, you can link directly to the TREC website where they have this file placed, but it has changed. So if you are not compliant right now, then your website is directing people to a broken link, which means you're not compliant with TREC. And so we need to fix that. If you're paying somebody to do your website, you need to contact them and tell them where, let's update this HTML code and make sure that that's taken care of. There is something else that's talked about in broker responsibility, and it's, there used to be this requirement to sort of take a screenshot of the CPN and your IBS and post those as like favorites on social media and have it, kind of at the top of your photos whenever somebody goes to look through your social media sites. And now since the new broker responsibility class came out, they're being TREC is a little bit different about this. They're allowing you to just post like a link in bio that then has a link to the CPN or the IBS. And I think that's a cool change. To me, it makes a whole lot more sense to keep, your website updated rather than constantly go through social media and update some photo that the consumer may not even see, every time there's a new change on that.
So yeah, Todd, and we're not throwing our fellow colleagues under the bus. Once upon a time, we were scared, right? We had to put anywhere we were marketing ourselves, especially in the beginning of social media and Facebook and everything else being, that kind of took precedence over our website. And so, TREC wanted to make sure that where we're advertising that this, consumer protection notice was readily available. It's great to see now that they're kind of bowing down a little bit on that, and a link, directly to it in your bio, and making sure that it's properly, readily accessible in your website is sufficient at that point. So realtors, do not feel obligated to sit there and post the consumer protection notice to your newsfeed. You still can, if that's what you want to do, but you're not obligated to do it, and that's something that we need to discuss. So, Todd, that's great information, because again, that's a forms change, and really, in all honesty, I mean, that's obviously a violation. If somebody wanted to do anything, and remember, people, most of the time, it's not something that you do that gets you in trouble. It's the thing that you didn't do that gets you in trouble. So everybody, if you have any questions on that, then please, feel free to put something in the chat, and we can circle back with you. Let's see. I strongly believe that they should have these specific forms and notices on how to display to the consumer. Yes, I would agree they do. Unfortunately, there's so many different social media platforms and streams of communication nowadays. What's the spirit of it, Todd? What do they want the consumer to be able to, get to in a quick format?
Well, so the main thing is, first of all, honestly, they do. TREC is telling us on almost every single. I know we keep having new social media feeds or social media things pop up, and so TREC can't stay on top of that. I don't know that anybody could, but they do give three big examples. So one is Facebook, one is Twitter, and the other is Instagram, and everything else kind of looks like those, and it's in the broker responsibility class. So your supervisor or your broker has been taught this if they've taken it within the last, I think, year and a half, something like that. So someone in your office knows how to post or should know how to post these things, so it's out there. The information's out there, but the intent is just consumer transparency, as with everything else, that we need to make sure that our consumers know who to contact if they have an issue. They need to know governing bodies, even above you as the agent or even the broker, of who do we contact if something fails here, if something goes wrong, heaven forbid.
Sure. No, that's fantastic. Now, Abdul asked, what about in our emails?
What about what? Oh, emails.
In our emails. So as far as linking to it.
Yeah, I mean, you could. There is no requirement there for email, but you could. You definitely, the IBS is totally different, but I'm just talking about consumer protection notice. I'll load up, give you a direct answer on that, but you could put it in the email, and I see nothing wrong with having this really maybe coupled with your IBS as you hand it over to people before your first substantive meeting. But the requirement is it's got to be easily and readily noticeable on really any site that you're using to solicit business from anyone. And, with social media, it can be one click away, which is kind of what they reference in the broker responsibility class a couple of times. Is it's one click away. So if you have it on if your brokerage provides a personal domain or whatever, you better make sure it's on there. You better make sure the IABS is on there as well. And if it's not, go through the proper channels to get that fixed. But just one click away.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, Abdul, I hope that clarifies the IABS is different than the consumer protection notice. So that is something that needs to be reflected, in your email, but not necessarily the consumer protection notice. So, okay, isn't that riveting, Todd? We'll get back to more fun topics.
All right, great. Yeah.
Hey, but you know what? These are the things that nobody really wants to talk about because you start tuning out. But you know what? We all need to be vigilant and have these conversations with one another. Ask a fellow colleague, have you updated your consumer protection notice lately? Because I guarantee you they haven't. So, okay. Let's go to the next form. Cindy Baas, we're going to talk about the update to the seller's disclosure notice.
Yes, wonderful. So in the 8th legislation, there was a realtor that championed for this change to be made, and it is for the corrugated stainless steel tubing that are in houses. And so the reason that this is so important is understanding the type of tubing that is in there. And so, like many other things that are in the seller's disclosure, that seller needs to disclose. And if the seller is not sure, there is going to be an unknown selection there as well. And so the reason that this happened is because the safety issue of it. If it's the wrong type of tubing that is in the home and lightning strikes the home can explode. So that is why that this is so important for the sellers to be able to disclose this information. Now, we are realtors, we are not plumbers, we are not inspectors, so we can give them the information. We can tell them who to contact to be able to figure that out. Like so many other things in the home, they probably don't know, but we need to get them that information on the seller's disclosure form. We cannot fill it out for them, but we can give them, a plumber who can come out and look at it and see for them what kind of tubing it is. So it's for the safety of the buyer and the consumers. So
well, and the biggest thing that was on their screen, and I wanted everybody to see our big beautiful faces there for a minute. But what it was is unknown is still an acceptable answer, yes, just like on other questions. And so this isn't another panic item. This is just something that further gives the opportunity to disclose information that is known about the property. And I want to further elaborate on that. So Justin Holland, who is the state representative for HD 33, actually is our representative that championed this as something to go through legislation. And it was because I actually went to school with Justin, and it was a fellow Rockwell High School. A fellow Rockwell High School friend, unfortunately, did come to a situation where CSST ended up blowing up the home. And so it is a very sad occurrence, and it's not something that happens often by any means, or else there would be different types of grandfathering clauses and everything else. But this was something that, if nothing else, we can go through, can continue to provide additional disclosure when we're aware of that, and understanding, just like there are other things like Federal Pacific panels and other things like that we've updated over the years that have had concerns, that we're just disclosing those. So again, unknown is an acceptable answer. This isn't to put further scrutiny or liability on the consumer, the seller, the listing agent, or the buyer's agent, but it's just one more option to sit there. Now, what is the thing that people are talking about right now, though, in regards to the updated piping that we're talking about? Cindy, what are you seeing where everybody's thinking this is referencing to?
Well, Ashley, I don't know if we're on the same page on this or not, but they're just getting, very bent out of shape that it's just more that the seller's going to have to disclose, and they have no clue of what it is. So, not exactly sure if that's what you were referencing, but
that's okay. No, and more so, I saw when it first came out, it was all cast iron plumbing, because it went.
Yes.
We started talking about plumbing. Yes. So this has nothing to do with cast iron plumbing.
No. Sorry. I was thinking just gas. That's, and so, the cast iron plumbing, because you can get a plumber that can tell you what kind of gas lines you have. And so they do, and that's a whole different, aspect of what's, being disclosed and stuff. And we don't have to disclose what kind of cast iron plumbing there is, even though it's important, to know that. But no, this has nothing to do with the actual plumbing itself. A plumber just can tell you if the gas lines in the home are cast iron, or if they're the CSST, or whatever it is. So it has nothing to do with the plumbing.
Yes. So that's me. Todd, do you have anything else to add? You look like you were riveting through that conversation.
No. Look, I think it is important. You already touched on it. It's important to note that if the seller doesn't know, they have the ability to mark unknown. Like there's several things where they, anyways, yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about, because we constantly talk about increased liability even in our industry on us. Well, one, we shouldn't be filling out the seller's disclosure or answering questions as such. But there are other things that we can do, and there is a product in the space, and we're not pushing it or anything else because it can be used for free. But as you guys being broker owners and educators, what do you feel about Seller Shield?
I really like it.
Yeah.
I encourage my agents to use it. It covers a bunch, and I love that certain information that the seller enters into that may trigger additional disclosures. I think that's
Yep.
fantastic, and so it's just another sort of like another helper for for the agent in case they were to miss something, like, oh, do we need a lead-based paint disclosure here, or
Yeah.
on-site sewer facility, that kind of thing. The other thing I think that's huge is a lot of agents don't know about this, and maybe your broker doesn't either, but there is this case. If you look it up, it's I think the verdict happened in 2019, but it's a Flalo v. Harris. It happened in our backyard here in Plano, I think, is where that kind of originated. And basically, it's, how there's choices when it comes to the seller's disclosure notice.
Right.
There's the TREC version, which literally matches the Texas Property Code word for word and formatting perfectly. And then there's the Texas Realtor version. Sometimes offices have their own. I've seen that before. Anyways, the important thing here is this is a seller's decision on which one they choose. And you, as the agent, need to know that the TREC one discloses the bare minimum, and that the Texas Realtor one actually discloses more than what is required by Texas Property Code. And anyways, what happened in the case was the seller said that they took on damages because their listing agent only gave them the Texas Realtor version and had them disclose more information than what they had to, or what they were required to. And I think it was just a lot of miscommunication, whenever you kind of look through the whole thing. And but anyways, the seller was awarded damages in this case. So it is a scary thing. Seller's disclosure gives you gives the consumer a choice of both of those, and I think that's pretty awesome.
So Seller Shield, guys, if you guys haven't heard about that, you can go online. It's a free service that you can actually offer to your clients. And there's additional, obviously, purchase options, in-app purchase options, just like anything else, if you want protection or coverage or anything else like that. But it is a free tool. And I think in the days of trying to populate these forms with technology, it's so difficult to get the seller's disclosure to actually work. We have all the rest of our forms that populate appropriately for electronic signature and fillable forms. But so Seller Shield has that nailed down. We've got that in the chat. So Lauren asked which one would be the best one to use. And Todd, I think that's a trick question because I think it's the one that the seller wants to use. What do you think?
I'm on board with that answer. I totally approve. So I don't think it's not our job to be making legal decisions for our clients, right? And so I think I provide my opinion. I don't tell them what to use, but I just, I'm friends with a few attorneys, and a lot of times they tell me to keep my mouth shut, in case they're, and of course in personal discussion, sometimes they tell me that, but I'm just saying, like, not that I've been in all these criminal, anyway, but
Todd has an ankle monitor on.
That's
right
it.
Now.
I know, right? Yeah. Thank God we can do this over Zoom because I'm stuck here now. Anyways, but sometimes it's good to just do the bare minimum. But then again, if you think about, especially in residential sales, part of I think a successful sale is, there's like super honesty and maybe some warm, fuzzy feelings, and disclosing the bare minimum may go against that, in my opinion. And so, that's why this needs to be the seller's decision and not ours.
So I'm going to go back to Beverly. Does Seller Shield offer both options to seller? In fact, I think they offer like three. They either offer two or three. So Beverly, anything that's in, I think, our forms library that we have access to and everything else, and it allows them to pick through that. And then it also allows them, and I've never used the coverage, so I can't sit there and attest to what that is. Oh gosh, you guys have homers over here. Class 29, one of a kind. Carl Leatherman. Yeah, Carl.
Hey, girl.
Stop getting in here. But no, so it does offer options, and then it also offers options of coverage should there be a claim of non-disclosure, and that is one of the biggest things that probably still is, at least it used to be, the number one lawsuit that was triggered in real estate was non-disclosure. Is that still what you guys understand?
It is.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to go to Cindy because Todd looked like he wasn't ready to answer that one. So
no, I talked too much, and I want Cindy to talk. So
okay, that's good. It's good. No,
good,
yes,
good
it is. Not disclosing, and sellers don't do it on purpose. And so as listing agents, we need to make sure when we have those seller's disclosures that they're completely filled out. Because having an incomplete seller's disclosure is just like not having one at all.
Yeah.
And so, buyer's agents need to be wary of that too. If there's, things that are missing that when you go to show the property, you can visually see that are there, but it's not filled out on the seller's disclosure, buyer's agents, beware. Don't have your client sign it if it's incomplete because they're accepting it. So.
Well, and I think that's the different thing. So is there a difference between providing one? If they're providing one that is not fully filled out, is that actually providing a seller's disclosure?
I am not an attorney, but in my professional opinion, they are not providing it.
Right. I'm with you. They didn't provide a complete form, So I think in one of our TREC classes, one of the three that are sort of put on by TREC, I can't recall which one. I teach all three of them, but there's a mention of this, of how do we handle it whenever somebody does provide, if a listing agent or seller does provide a seller's disclosure notice that's not filled out, and basically you just return it to them and you say, hey, this is not totally completed. Thanks for the a third of the information you're supposed to give me, but I need it completely filled out. And so that kind of brings into question whenever we're looking at our, say, sales contract, and you look at 7B1 versus 7B2. One is the list, or the seller has provided this and the other one is not, and then there's all these other provisions there. It starts to get confusing of how do we do this. I'm not an attorney either, so I'm not gonna say exactly what we do, but you need to get the completed one for sure.
It's legal 1 and 2.
You don't play attorneys on Real Talk, guys? That's not what you do? Okay, got it. No, and I think that's something else to have that conversation, because the flip side of that is what we do need to understand is most agents, even very tenured ones. And so if you're a greener agent, do not feel, yes, Katie, the feed, it'll be parked and you can share it and watch it on YouTube and Facebook at any time. She was asking if the feed would be available after the fact. It absolutely will. But the biggest thing is that most agents, I would even guess 75%, that they don't realize if they don't have a completed one, or if they've not been given that seller's disclosure and they check that box in 7B2 that says have not received and has to provide within 3 days, okay, which one of you wants to answer what they get if you execute with it still in there?
They get a free walkaway period of 7 days.
After they receive it, correct?
Yeah, starting on the day they get it.
Yeah.
So
and I had that actually happen to me.
Have you?
Todd, sorry about that. Yeah, I was actually able to get a client out of a contract because of that, because they didn't provide it in a timely manner. And so they wanted to terminate, the buyer wanted to terminate due to the fact the seller didn't want to do any of the repairs. And our option period so this is going to show some, something I did wrong, but anyway, and I'm not perfect, but option period ended on a Sunday, and I kept trying to talk with the listing agent on Saturday, never got back to me. Sunday never got back to me, and I did not terminate by that Sunday at 5:00 like I should have. However, because the seller didn't give that seller's disclosure on a timely manner, it gave us another 5 additional days. So my client was covered and was able to recover her earnest money, and the seller was not happy. And the listing agent was, you don't know what you're talking about. And so I was able to go back to that paragraph and educate. Yeah. So yes, it's a huge paragraph.
Well, and I think, Todd, do you have anything to add on that? Because you look like you have that eyebrow where you're like, I'm ready.
I do. Okay. So look, here's the thing. I know there's probably, I would imagine, mostly realtors listening to this. Yeah. Here's the question. And I try to pose this anytime this topic comes up. But if you know there's another provision that's going to provide your buyer with a way out, and there's still an option period that you have noted in the contract, and you have a money amount for the option fee, then I personally don't feel like good advising or, reminding the buyer, hey, we need to pay this. I'm trying to dance around it, but basically I'm just saying, like, if you have other ways out that are very easy, for example, 7B1, or 7B2, if the one is selected that says the buyer has, or a seller has not provided the seller's disclosure notice, then, and if all you were going to do is a 7-day option anyways, well, there you go. You have it. And that's assuming that the seller gets it directly to your buyer or to you on day one of execution or day 0 at execution. And so, I have a hard time instructing the buyer, like, hey, we need to pay this option fee if we go under contract with something like that selected with another easy provision out of the contract. So my takeaway from that as a listing agent is I don't ever want to go under contract without the seller's disclosure notice being delivered. By the way, posting in the MLS is not delivery.
Yep.
You want to deliver it, and you want to make sure that the correct box is checked in paragraph 7 so that you don't have to deal with this. By the way, this is sort of a silver bullet, and you start getting into weird stuff. If you do what I'm talking about, make sure that you talk to your broker or you understand it, because there are some other ramifications. If you have them pay the earnest money only, well, the order in which title applies that money goes to option first and then to earnest. So make sure you know what you're doing is all I'm saying. But anyways, yeah, that's just where I'm at. I usually won't instruct the buyer. Not that I'm giving him instructions, but we talk about these things, and it's usually my advice, like, hey, maybe consider don't even using the option period here, because we have all these other ways out that are built in because they didn't provide us with the seller's disclosure notice.
Oh, and of course we have Alicia Austin, 44 buyer outs in the contract.
Hey, there you go.
Yes, that's it. And that's the truth. But that's where, we really don't get into this enough. And so, guys, hopefully this scratched the surface enough to go, excuse me, what? Because I have tenured agents that have been doing this 20, 30 years that still don't know that. And so I know Katie said she never knew that about the seller's disclosure notice. Well, Katie, get in line, because really, honestly, most agents don't. No, they don't. And so I think that's something that advertises how important it is for you guys to attend their classes, because Todd and Cindy go over these very things. So that's fantastic. Can you believe 2 forms took up almost 30 minutes of our time? But this is what happens. All right, so let's go quickly into the riveting changes that have occurred. And they're important, but they might not be as exciting as the seller's disclosure notice. So let's go into, there we go. We're back to little squares on the right. But we have to talk about what we went into, kind of, they say emergency order, and it's because of the 88th legislation that just ended. And so September 1st, we have some new rules changes that are now going into effect. And so let's scroll down to the first one there. All right. More options to earn CE at TREC meetings. Is there anything riveting there that we need to touch, guys?
I would just say, if you guys are ever in Austin, or you can actually attend them via Zoom online, sit through these TREC meetings. It's quite informational on what you do find out, and you do get to, earn these. I know they have them when we have our winter meeting in Austin. TREC usually has a meeting on that Monday. And so that's a great time to sit in and just listen.
That's great. And then it looks like this isn't, new adopted rules, but we do have new broker responsibility advisory committee, which is great. Do you guys know what the goal is of the new advisory committee?
Todd, do you know? I don't know specifically what the goal is, but they are out there looking at our contracts and making sure too that they are what they need to be, the changes that need to be to protect the consumers. They make changes like to the broker responsibility courses or offer those suggestions to TREC.
Alicia said competency. We are focusing on competency. So that's what we're going with this. So I know there's different things, and before we actually get to the rules adopted, there are different things that are coming, to our industry. And the biggest thing is because we need more mentorship, we need more advisory, and we need more oversight. And I know that's something that is being pressed on not just a statewide level, but a national level. Todd, you mentioned this the other day, just as far as the, transparency with mentorship on transactions. And that's something that we're really looking at from the broker side and making sure that there's some sort of advisory capacity when agents are practicing, and whether they're brand new or practicing in a new, proficiency of real estate. So do you want to talk about that for just a second?
Absolutely. Please stop me because I can go on forever about this. Okay. No, so look, if you're with a brokerage and you're not the broker, you need to know that according to some new rule, or the new rule that just came out, you must have mentorship on your first 3 of any transaction type. So, if it's residential listing, you've got to have mentorship on the first 3 of those. It doesn't have to necessarily be from the broker herself, but it needs to be from someone, within, or that the broker has deemed worthy to mentor you.
So Todd, hold on. Can only brokers be females? Because you said herself. You are a broker, sir. So
I don't know. I didn't. Yeah. Okay. Fine. Whoever your broker is, however.
I just throw that one out there just for a second. All right. Good.
No. Yeah. Thanks. Well, I grew up with 3 sisters, and anyways, yeah. So I have like a weird thing. So make sure if you're listings first time, even on the commercial side, no matter what it is, if you're doing a lease for the first time, I know several seasoned agents that maybe did 0 leases for the first 5 years of their career because it's been crazy, and now they're getting into leases. Well, guess what? They're still under this new rule where they must have some mentorship for the first 3 years. By the way, I can't say seasoned agents without thinking of anyway, never mind. I'm not even gonna
barbecue seasoning,
I should have said tenured.
Yeah. There you go. I like it. No, so that's important. And so we're going back to, okay, so Ty Williams was on last year's education requirements, supervision, 48-hour response are some of the things they focused on. So that's great because now we're going into the rules adopted on an emergency basis. And we've got a couple of things on top of, you know what, let's jump to it because it's one thing that I want to make sure we get to. Timely responses. Can we scroll to that one? Because it's one, so while we're scrolling to that, Patty, it's actually mentorship on the 3 transactions in that field. So if you're working as a listing agent for the first time, you need mentorship on your first 3 listings or your transactions, as Alicia piped in. I'm glad she's on here. She's helping me at this point, teeing me up. So, so it's not for your first 3 years, even though I could advocate, and I'm sure Cindy and Todd could say the same thing. Everybody needs mentorship and advocacy, especially in their first 3 years. So this is the one that I think a lot of people have seen popping around, and how to comply with the new response time rule. So obligation to respond timely, which is both necessary and needed, but I'm going to say slightly embarrassing that we had to even get to this place, but yet here we are. So Cindy, what is the essence of the new rule?
So you have 48 hours to get back to an agent that has contacted you, or not just an agent, but a client, a customer, to consumer, client, anybody that has contacted you within the transaction. And I would say lender, title company, anybody. You have a responsibility to get back in touch with them. And, when I'm teaching this, taught an EBR class, I said, there is no excuse these days. I'm sorry. I said, we have it on our arms. We have it in our hand. There's just no excuse for us not to get back. And, you can have hot responses where you hit 2 letters and hit send, and it'll say, hey, let me get back to you later. I can't do it right now. So yeah, I could go on and on regarding this because it's just, it's unacceptable that we can't get answers that we need. And it's a bad reflection on our industry too, especially when they're in the midst of, the multiple offers, and we still have multiple offers in our, in our marketplace right now. Yeah. And if we can't give a buyer a response, within 48 hours, they're going to think that we, as the buyer's agent, do not know what we're talking about, when it's the listing agent that, in essence, hasn't responded to us to let us know what the heck is going on.
Right. So, which is bad for the profession overall.
No, absolutely. And I think Sherry Fearbacher has said it nicely. Shameful this is needed. It is shameful. She always has to pop in. So that's okay. Love you, Mom.
I'm surprised it hasn't been before.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But no, I mean, it is shameful, because it's shameful not because of just poor communication. It's shameful because we put people in this limbo position for days on end. And as agents, we're conditioned to deal with it, and we tend to drink just a little bit more than the layman individual. Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. Todd, do you have a mic over there that I need to see? Okay. But no, so we sit there and we talk about, we make jokes about it, and we do this every day, and then we're expecting our clientele who don't have those same, barometers and those response, times and everything else ingrained in them. And so I'm really happy for this. Now, obviously, we're not in that multiple offer situation where it's a week from now, we're going to make a decision and there's 42 offers deep. But it obviously stemmed from this. And so I think that's really appropriate that now we have that. So I want to ask you a question. Now, we have weekends and holidays. It's 2 days, correct? It's not.
Correct. It's 2 calendar days, period.
2 calendar days. So everybody needs to understand that. Just like the option period. We had somebody argue one time, but it's Thanksgiving. That's still a day. So we need to understand that. So it's 2 calendar days, guys, that you need to understand that you have to respond. So 48 hours from somebody initiating contact, which is, again, if you're waiting 48 hours, shame on you. But 48 hours that you have to respond. And then from there, question then, if somebody sits there and puts in the description, in private remarks, in a response to an offer being submitted, that the seller will make a decision 72 hours from now, blah, 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 thank you so much. Are they in violation if they don't respond within 48?
My opinion is yes. I think they are, no matter what. You need to at least provide an update within that 48 hour, or not, it's not 48 hours, but within that 2 calendar day period. You need to be, that agent needs to take the 4 seconds it takes to send a text or an email or a quick phone call back and just remind them of the deadline or something, that's my opinion. Cindy, what do you think?
Yeah, I completely agree. Just an acknowledgement, of saying, yes, it is still 72 hours. This is the day, that they're going to be making that response. That way, that buyer's agent can communicate back to that client and say, here's the response I've gotten. Better than not being able to say that to that buyer at all.
Absolutely. And we're also assuming that the other agent, the buyer's agent, would read the private remarks. Sometimes that gets lost in the shuffle. If you've had 15 showings or whatever that day and you're writing a contract that night, it's easy to miss that. And so I think more communication to me is always better. And so, I think you may as well, and also, of course, you want to stay compliant with the TREC rule.
Well, and to me, it's also professional courtesy. Do you know what that word is? Courtesy. I think. Sorry.
3 syllables. I don't think we hear it often.
No, I think we've lost that, in our profession, sadly, and so we need to get that back going to each other.
Well, it's like Justin said, sad that many of our realtors can't be a true professional in something as simple as responding. He won a client recently because he promised he'd call him at 3 p.m. and he did. I mean, guys, the bar is so stinking low occasionally. I mean, just think about everything we're doing in our lives right now. If somebody gives proper service and communication, even if it's not exactly what you need, you're like, what a breath of fresh air. you know, and those are things that can be the differentiator. I mean, this isn't meant to be kindergarten. It's just meant to, like, you know, get you recalibrated to realize that communication is the root of all success. And if we can do better at that, it's just sad that the regulatory commission had to be the ones to say, y'all need to do better. But yet here we are. So one more question on that. So if somebody puts in there that, you know, will respond in 4 days and they don't respond in the 2 days, what's the recourse?
I think it's a TREC complaint.
Okay.
That's really it. I mean, look, that's jumping the gun. You should probably follow the proper channels. You know, I think first step is contact supervisor and or broker. And then if that is unsatisfactory, then keep on moving up. But that's, of course, agent's choice. You know, TREC doesn't know when to investigate someone. They're not out there just, you know, tricking us and trying to catch us and stuff.
Yeah.
The way that our industry, the way we raise the bar in this profession of, you know, of professionalism is sadly by filing complaints. And I mean, I don't want to do it just as much as I'm sure nobody does. But anyways, there is a proper order to go, and I don't think you go straight to the TREC or, you know, to filing the TREC complaint.
No, that's energy. That's also energy expelled, Todd, and that's not something that necessarily you want to sit there and do. I think that's also where you communicate expectations with your client. Hey, there is a requirement for them to respond within 48 hours. What I can tell you is I can't guarantee you they're going to do it. And if they don't, maybe this isn't the right situation or the right, you know, listing for us to, you know, move on with. And that's, again, where communication and setting proper expectations with your client will still make you look fantastic. Now, Carmen had a good question of what about the big corporations that don't respond on weekends? I'm not going to label necessarily the names of those brokerages. However, they're asking if the auto response would be sufficient in this instance.
Cindy?
I love it, Todd. Yeah, defer to Cindy.
Yeah, let's do that. So, you know, they are a broker here in Texas, and they still have the same rules that we have to follow. And so I believe that, you know, they need to understand, and they have agents to contact. And I've had to contact them myself and really push the button and let them know, hey, you guys need to get back to me. I know you don't work on weekends, but I need a response first thing Monday morning. So definitely, you know, because they have chosen to be brokers in Texas, they still have to abide by these rules and regulations.
Okay. No, I think that's great. And may I make an advisory announcement to all the realtors out there that have on their voicemail that if it's after 6 p.m. on a Friday that they'll respond on Monday, that maybe you want to delete that.
Right.
I don't know. Todd, you had a visceral reaction to that.
I do. You know, we all spend all this money trying to get people to call us, right? And then you put something weird like that in your voicemail. It does not make any sense. Or text me and I'll respond faster or whatever. How about you just, I don't know, answer the phone and take the 30-second phone call or whatever. But anyways.
Oh, no. It's hysterical. No, hey, Lauren, we appreciate it. She said, y'all are awesome. Thanks for all this valuable information and not sugarcoating anything. I mean, that's the whole point. It's real talk, right? I mean, we're trying to put the real back into real estate, and sometimes we just don't do that. And that's not being mean to our colleagues. And I call them colleagues, not competitors, because y'all are my colleagues. Y'all are my friends. But sometimes we need to talk to our friends, and we need to tell them when, hey, it's time to try a different tactic. So if you know anybody that has that voicemail, maybe it's time to have a loving conversation. So again, look how fast this goes. We only have 15 minutes left, and we've only got through like one thing on the actual updates. We got the forms. Okay, so if we can go back to the updated adoptions September 1st. So one thing that I want to make sure that we do, because obviously everybody that's on here right now can go on the TREC website and look at the rest of them. I really want to make sure that we focus on the LLC. So that's an important one. And I think we'll take a little bit of dialogue. And so we're going to put our great Oz to work for a second so he can find the change to the LLCs registering with TREC. But Todd, I know this was something that There we go. Business
All right.
entity license exemption. So this is something that I think is really important because we all love paying taxes. And our accountants, whether you do it yourself or you have a CPA or somebody else, they hate realtors. And so here we are, and the LLC and S Corp situation has been at the forefront. If you're not the actual brokerage owner, it's been a little different. And so now we have an update to that. So Todd, I'll kind of tee you up because we talked about that the other day.
Great.
In essence, what is the change?
Well, look, so up until January 1st of this upcoming year, this is the easiest way, in my opinion, to not be in good standing with TREC. If you're doing this incorrectly, the broker primarily is the one assuming some liability here.
Okay.
So many times as brokers, I've been contacted by an agent saying, hey, my CPA told me there's some tax incentives to be paid as an LLC. Can you cut my checks to Awesome Realtor LLC? And the answer is no, by the way. And if you are doing that, then I would fix it immediately until January 1st. But the reason is because the only people that can be paid for doing real estate activities within the state of Texas, especially when it comes to representation, are real estate licensees. And if your LLC is not registered with TREC, then it should not be paid because it's not licensed. The only way currently until January 1st to register an LLC with TREC is to have a designated broker and form an entity, like actually do the whole thing. Like I work for an entity I'm the designated broker for one. You would have to have a designated broker as well. If you're not a broker, that entails you finding one and asking them to kind of sit as your broker of record. And this is an issue, right? Because there are some tax incentives that potentially licensees, especially agents, are missing out on because they can't be paid as an LLC. And so I'm excited about this change. I think it's awesome. I can finally say yes to these agents and allow them to do that.
Yeah.
But so many questions are coming from it. And the biggest thing I want you to know is, when you look at the purpose of this, or really how it breaks down, it says it on that page that we just had up, but it says, let's see, the corporation must be established for the sole purpose of receiving compensation earned by a license holder while engaging in real estate brokerage and is at least 51% owned by the license holder. So in other words, you're not forming a little micro brokerage. You're not doing anything like that whatsoever. You cannot act and take any actions whatsoever under that brokerage's name or the entity that you're forming. So it's not that. You're not like getting a new entity with TREC. You're not going to change brokerages or anything. It is specifically so that you can receive income to an LLC's name. But TREC needs to be notified about it, and you're going to have to register it. I don't know what that process is going to look like because, you can't do it yet. You can't do it till January 1st of 2024.
Sure. Well, and the biggest thing with that is it almost reminds me of just a DBA. So instead of looking at it as another entity or a brokerage or anything else, it's allowing somebody else to pay you in that, business entity. So your broker doesn't need to get in the weeds of an LLC or anything else like that. But it's almost like, my husband's name is Reese, but his first name is Philip, and he is a DBA and doing Reese Gentry, doing business with Reese Gentry. And so it's a little bit different. But from a tax, advantage standpoint, it's huge. It's huge for our industry. And it's been difficult for brokers, especially the ones that do it the right way, to make sure that we're not, I know Cindy's laughing because there are plenty out there that will sit there and say, well, so-and-so will do it. Well, that's great. Again, I don't look great in orange, except I do because it's really good for my complexion. But I don't want to wear orange smocks. And I don't want to wear, horizontal stripes. And so that's where we are. But I love that TREC listened to us and has now put an avenue and a path for people to get, more tactical with their taxes. I'm not saying that you shouldn't pay any. But I'm just saying that we should have more tactical advantages like other business owners because we are independent contractors. And that's the biggest thing is we keep on getting told we're independent business owners, but then you don't have the advantages of independent business owners. And so now we finally have kind of found that happy medium where we're doing that. So, all right. So we've got 10 minutes left. You guys are the ones that keep us in check. And so how about not rapid fire, but the two of you, what's something we haven't gone over? You know what? Let's pivot. Hold on. I have an idea. What are we seeing right now? Because the rest of it, we put it in the chat, what the updates are and everything else. And everybody can go in there and feel free to still put comments in the live chat, even after the fact, because we can come back and answer. But let's talk about things that we are seeing that are just gnawing at you in contracts right now, or offers that we're still seeing people make mistakes on. So Cindy, I'm going to go with you first. What's a common mistake that you're seeing still, maybe from a recent change or something else that agents still are not grasping?
So an objection section, paragraph 6.
Okay.
That is a lot of times, and I know I did it when I first started, 17 years ago, was to put, single family residence or, whatever like that. And I'm just like,
by the way, don't put that anymore.
Yeah, don't
put that. Most part, unless you're in a mixed area.
Yeah, mixed zoning, maybe it makes sense, but that's bad.
Yeah. Yes. But the contract specifically says 1 to 4 residential family resale contract. So don't put that in there. That is for, I always suggest if the buyer is wanting to put a pool in there, they need to be able to do research to make sure that pool is going to fit in there, and so something like, that, or, the new urban animals. If you took Legal 1 and 2 a couple years ago, there was a scenario in that one that the buyer, had a potbelly pig, and Keller doesn't like doesn't allow potbelly pigs. And so that needed to be put in there. Go back to Legal 1 and 2, you'll find it, I promise.
Was that Hank? Hank's potbelly pig?
Yeah, was it Hank? Yeah. Okay, yeah. It was Hank. So objections, that is something that, we really need to understand what that is about. And I'm going to plug our contracts classes. MetroTex has a ton of them. And so you guys need to take those if you have any questions. Yeah.
Okay. So if we can pop on there, mymetrotex.com/events, because then you guys can click on there and find out with Cindy or Todd or some of our other amazing, look at that. It's like it happens on cue. I love it. Privacy fence. Okay. So that's a big one. If again, Sherry Fearbacher, we have dogs. Dogs do not like wrought iron. So nope. If they're curious dogs, and that was one I remember when Sherry was a licensed agent and I was just her protege that was following her around. But in our own homes, it was so important that if we were moving into a community, that we would be able to build a privacy fence if the majority were wrought iron. And a lot of times the listing agent is just unfortunately not well versed enough. Sometimes it's a preference that people have wrought iron, but a lot of times it's the covenants of the association because they don't want privacy fences. So that's a great one because we have very loud dogs who are very nosy. And I'm very proud of mine right now that they're over there in the other room and they have not barked, but we have 7 minutes left. So, all right. So objections is one. Todd, what about you? Where's a pet peeve line for you right now?
I can tell you, it's, I think paragraph 22 notices. This bothers me. We've had a really great change that went into effect in February of this year, where now at the bottom of that section, it says with CC2. And I'm so thankful that that's there, especially as a broker, because there were so many agents that were just, remember the days where you just put in your own agent information in that spot? And now guess what? You and your broker were like required to handle any and all notices that really should have been going directly to the consumer. Additionally, whenever we look at the TREC classes, I think it's in Legal 1, this is talked about. There's actually a slide in that class that TREC made the slide, by the way, not your instructors. On those classes, TREC makes them. And it says it says that we should be sending all notices directly to the party representative and the party. Well, I don't know of many people doing that. I know that a lot of people know that they should be doing that, but you can't really do that unless you have notices filled out properly. And TREC is pushing it. And I think it's really important because, look, we're all human beings, and you are susceptible to a car accident or something, something terrible could happen to you. And if we're dealing with like time, things that time is of the essence of, which really is almost everything in the contract. So let's say if the buyer needs to terminate and the option is up at 5 today, and the agent gets in a wreck. Well, hopefully the buyer's agent has the seller's information and can still send all that information over on time. There's probably better examples that aren't as dark as what I just used, but anyways,
we have to use those circumstances. Yeah. Hey,
I
when
know, well,
somebody sits there and says, "Are we almost done?" The everybody is signed. I'm like, unless somebody gets hit before they get to the closing table, I'm like, those are the dark circumstances we have to put on there. But you're absolutely right, Todd. It's there for a reason. So fill out the information, and whether you're the listing agent or the buyer's agent, make sure that you don't send that over to all respective parties until that's filled out. I mean, it's one of those things. So as a buyer's agent, I am filling that out, and putting in my buyer's contact information with my information as a CE or CC. And then on the seller side, it also gives us an opportunity to say, hey, is there an email address that you'd love me to add on the contract or the offer? It's not a contract until it's ratified. But on the offer, for your seller, so you don't have to add it after the fact. And I think those are the things that we need to be looking at. It just keeps us all in compliance and out of hot water. And I think it's super big. And so we only have 4 minutes left, and there's one more that came through. By the way, Alicia is still sitting there and praising you guys. And so, of course, we got a homer there. But still seeing agents not adding PID and MUD notices in paragraph 7. So yes, and that was, sorry, I skipped through. So MUDs, PIDs, and PUD notices, those are the things that we're not seeing as much. And that's something that we talked about the other day. So paragraph 6, I think it's E11 because I have it written down because that's one of my pet peeves, especially if we're practicing in more, I call it suburban rural, where it's still close, but it's definitely a more rural area of suburban areas that we practice in. And so that's something that guys, I mean, those MUDs and PIDs and PUDs, they're very difficult. We're still trying to get clarity on where we can find those all out. But those are things as a listing agent, we need to be having those conversations with our sellers because unfortunately, they are not being asked of us in our seller's disclosure right now. But it is on MLS, at least for, is it MUD and PID? Is that what it asks of us? Yes. So, but there's other additional taxing authorities. So I don't want to go on a tangent on that unless you guys have something you want to
I have something
put on
to
there.
add.
Okay, good.
Something to know is this is not just a way out of the contract for the buyer. This is, if you don't have the right things disclosed regarding MUD or PID or a few others, what is it, WCID, something like that, Water Conservation District.
Water districts.
Yeah, if you don't have those disclosed, there is no contract. It is a requirement for them to be disclosed ahead of time before we even can execute. And so it's not really a way out. This is not even one of the 44 ways out or whatever that, Reba Saxon teaches about. This is just, there is no way, there is no contract, there is no agreement. Yeah. So as a listing agent, especially, but honestly, some of this falls on the buyer's agent too, especially if you're really familiar with the area and you're like, I am sure that this isn't a MUD. Then, we need to all kind of work together and figure this out, make sure that those, because it's really about the consumer, right? So that they have some transparency in this process and know what they're getting into before they get into it.
Mm-hmm. Well, so Patty, what about builders regarding PIDs and PUDs? So builders have more disclosure on them now than they used to. And unfortunately, that was a very sad thing where people were buying properties in those developments. And then they were finding these notices for $3,000 that were separate from their tax bill. And it was horrific. And so there is more legislation and more policy that has gone on. And I think the builders are doing a pretty decent job on that. It's the agents that are not doing as great of a job now. And so that's something that's very important. So if you are in an underdeveloped area or an area that is newly developing, you need to be asking, are there any type of special taxing authorities or utility districts or anything else? Because the likelihood is they are. East Texas, Denton, Texas, West Texas, anywhere we're going right now, there's probably some sort of infrastructure cost that is going to developing these areas. So make sure. And yes, go TREC. We have more work to do. So
Yeah, sure.
we're at 6:30 on the dot. So what I'm going to say is, if you are going to the conference, and I am so proud, we have like 45 people that are going to not only the conference, but the installation gala, but we have something like 120 MetroTex members that are going to the conference. And so if you are going to the Texas Realtors Conference in San Antonio, Thursday through Sunday, please let us know. Reach out to one of us, Todd, Cindy, or myself, because we will all be there. And we would love to see you guys and talk more about all things TREC, real estate, and everything else. And hey, I'm going to let you plug that real quick. Who wants to plug TREC?
Oh, we have a great fiesta coming up on the 9th. Y'all have to be there. So love that. And you can go online and still buy tickets. And if you have questions, reach out to Todd and I, and we can help you with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
I think they're going to be selling tickets at the door too. So
yes.
Okay. No, and it's in San Antonio, guys. So if you're going to be down there, we would really love. There's my dog.
There's your dog.
6:31. If I had stopped at 6:30, she would have been fine. But no, look, and it's supposed to be Fiesta Purple Wear because we're the purple solution. I bought a purple T-shirt, and it might be a sassy graphic T-shirt. So you'll have to see it to believe it as far as that goes. But no, and that's the arm that fights for the advocacy and the realtor issues, guys. So all these legislative issues that have just come through and the things we're adopting, it's because of investing in TREC. And so that's why we all do this. Todd and Cindy are amazing TREC trustees. I was a former TREC chair and still one of the biggest TREC ambassadors, and I'm just so proud of everything we do. And so I'm so sorry we didn't get to all of the questions in the chat, but we so appreciate you guys. But what I can tell you is go to mymetrotex.com/events and find when Cindy and Todd are teaching their different classes. And so you can get them in more one-on-one real time as far as that goes. So Cindy and Todd, thank you so much for spending your evening. And I will have to see you guys for like 4 days straight here very soon.
Yes, you do.
no, it's great. Yeah.
Looking forward to it.
All right.
Thank you.
Hey, we are
Cheers.
essential. That's
We are.
TREC thing. All right.
Yes.
All right, guys. We'll see you later. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see